In the same way, when your energy feels stuck, when your spirit feels heavy, when your life feels as though it has paused, it is not because your potential is gone, it is because something within you has shifted and now calls for your attention. There are moments in life when you feel disconnected from your purpose, overwhelmed by expectations, or trapped in a pattern you cannot explain. You might think you are tired, you might think you are unmotivated, you might even think something is wrong with you. But the truth is simpler and far more empowering. Your energy becomes stuck when your mind, your body, and your actions fall out of alignment, when the mind is filled with noise, when the body is neglected, when your daily actions contradict your deepest values. Energy cannot flow. You begin to shrink inside yourself. You stop moving. You stop breathing fully. You stop living intentionally. And yet this stuckness is not your enemy. It is a signal, a teacher, a silent guide asking you to pause and look inward. Because the real cause is not your circumstances, it is not other people, it is not your limitations, it is the unconscious habits you carry, the patterns you repeat that drain your strength without you noticing. Maybe you are holding tension from years of pushing yourself too hard. Maybe your mind is restless because you spend your days reacting instead of choosing. Maybe you have forgotten the simple power of grounding yourself, of being present, of reconnecting with breath, intention, and clarity. Energy returns the moment you stop running from yourself. It returns when you create space inside your life and inside your heart for stillness, reflection, and deliberate action. It returns when you commit to small, disciplined steps that bring your mind, body, and purpose back into harmony. So ask yourself now, what am I holding on to that no longer serves me? What am I avoiding that is silently draining me? What powerful version of myself is waiting behind this blockage? Remember, energy is not something you chase. It is something you unlock. Stand up, straighten your spine, breathe deeply. This is where movement begins. This is where clarity begins. This is where you begin again. Now is the moment to reclaim your strength. Now is the moment to bring your life back into alignment. Now is the moment to stop waiting for change and become the change. When your mind, body, and actions fall out of alignment, the flow of your energy becomes interrupted in ways you often don't immediately recognize. Alignment is not a mystical concept. It is a very real state where what you think, what you feel, and what you do all move in the same direction. When these three elements work as one, you experience clarity, motivation, and an inner steadiness that makes decisions feel lighter and challenges feel manageable. But when they become disconnected, even slightly, energy begins to stagnate. You may notice it as fatigue, procrastination, emotional heaviness, or a sense that everything requires much more effort than it should. This misalignment usually begins in the mind. The modern world feeds your thoughts with a constant stream of information, expectations, comparisons, and pressures. Your mind becomes crowded with unfinished decisions, unresolved emotions, and imagined scenarios that never stop running. When the mind is overloaded, it becomes restless, unfocused, and easily distracted. It jumps from one thought to another, rarely settling long enough for you to truly understand what you want or how you feel. This mental fragmentation becomes the first barrier to your energy. A scattered mind consumes more energy than a focused one, leaving you drained even before you take a single meaningful action. The body also plays a crucial role. Many people treat the body as a machine they can push endlessly, ignoring the signals it sends. Tension builds in the shoulders, the breath becomes shallow, sleep becomes irregular, and posture collapses without you noticing. Your body stores everything your mind refuses to process: stress, frustration, fear, self-doubt. When these emotional imprints accumulate, the body tightens. That tightness restricts your movement, your breath, and eventually your ability to stay present. When the body is neglected, energy cannot circulate freely. It becomes trapped in knots of tension and exhaustion. Actions form the third part of alignment. You may have clear intentions in your mind and strong feelings in your heart, but if your actions contradict them, your energy becomes conflicted. You might say you want peace, yet surround yourself with chaotic habits. You might say you want growth, yet repeat routines that keep you stagnant. You might say you want change, yet avoid the uncomfortable steps required to create it. Every time your actions do not reflect your inner truth, you create friction within yourself. That friction drains energy faster than any physical task ever could, because it places you in a constant battle between who you are now and who you know you could be. When mind, body, and actions disconnect, energy doesn't just slow down, it turns inward, circling around unresolved tensions instead of moving forward. You may feel stuck without understanding why, because the cause is rarely dramatic. It is subtle. A small compromise here, a neglected habit there, a thought thought you push away instead of acknowledging. Over time, these subtle misalignments accumulate until you realize that you are no longer moving with intention, but simply reacting to life. The unconscious habits you carry, the ones you repeat without thought, without awareness, and without questioning, are often the real causes of stuck energy. These habits form quietly over time, shaped by past experiences, fears, expectations, and emotional patterns you never fully addressed. Because they operate in the background of your daily life, you don't see them as obstacles, you see them as normal, but it is these automatic reactions, these repeated cycles of behavior that silently drain your strength and keep you locked in the same emotional and energetic state day after day. Unconscious habits often begin as protective mechanisms. At some point, they served a purpose. They helped you avoid conflict, handle stress, or prevent disappointment. But over time, these once useful strategies become rigid. They stop adapting to your present reality and instead trap you in patterns that no longer serve your growth. You may avoid difficult conversations not because you are incapable of them, but because you once learned that staying quiet kept the peace. You may push yourself endlessly because you learned long ago that your worth comes from productivity. You may hesitate to take risks because failure once left a deep mark that you never fully healed from. These habits run deep, and because they are familiar, they go unchallenged. The most draining habits are often the smallest ones, the ones that seem insignificant. The tendency to wake up and immediately reach for your phone, the habit of saying yes even when your body says no. The pattern of distracting yourself the moment discomfort arises, the habit of filling every empty moment with noise instead of allowing space for reflection, the cycle of replaying old memories, arguments, or disappointments long after they have passed. These behaviors seem harmless on the surface, but each one pulls at your energy piece by piece until you are left feeling tired without understanding why. These unconscious patterns also influence your emotional state. When you react automatically, you stop choosing your responses. You become trapped in emotional loops, irritation that returns daily, stress that never fully leaves, worry that appears without reason. These emotions take root in your body, tighten your chest, shorten your breath, and drain your vitality. The more these loops repeat, the more they shape your identity. You begin to think, this is just who I am, when in reality, it is simply who your habits have trained you to be. Unconscious habits also shape the way you perceive yourself. They feed limiting beliefs that convince you to stay small. You begin to assume you are not ready, not capable, not disciplined enough, not confident enough. But these beliefs didn't come from truth, they came from repetition. When you practice self-doubt daily, it becomes your automatic state. When you practice avoidance, it becomes your default behavior. When you practice rushing, tension becomes your normal rhythm. These patterns drain energy because they keep you stuck in the same internal environment regardless of how much you want to grow. Becoming aware of these invisible habits is challenging because it requires honesty. It requires you to look at the parts of your life that you've avoided, the behaviors you've rationalized, and the routines you've outgrown. But until these unconscious patterns come into the light, they continue to hold power over your energy, directing your life without your permission. Energy returns when you create space inside your life, inside your mind, and inside your body for stillness, intention, and deliberate action. But this process does not begin with outward change. It begins with the decision to pause long enough to understand what is truly happening within you. When you stop running from your own thoughts and emotions, you give yourself the chance to reconnect with parts of you that have been ignored for far too long. This is not about forcing yourself to be productive or pushing yourself to power through. It is about recognizing that the state of your energy reflects the state of your inner world, and when that world is cluttered, chaotic, or disconnected, nothing flows as it should. Stillness is often misunderstood. Many people believe it means doing nothing or wasting time, but stillness is one of the most powerful actions you can take. It is the moment you step out of your habitual cycles and into awareness. When you allow yourself to be still, even for a few intentional breaths, you interrupt the automatic patterns that drain your energy. In stillness, you can observe your emotional state without judgment. Notice the tension you've been carrying and feel the areas of your body that have been asking for attention. This awareness alone begins to shift your energy, because what you acknowledge, you can eventually release. Reflection is the next part of reconnecting with your energy. Reflection does not mean overthinking or replaying old memories in a loop. It means honestly examining your life with curiosity instead of criticism. It means asking yourself why you feel stuck, what patterns keep repeating, and what you have been avoiding. Reflection brings clarity, is the foundation of movement. When you understand the roots of your stuckness, whether it is fear, exhaustion, unresolved emotions, or lack of direction, you no longer react unconsciously. You gain the ability to make choices that align with your intentions instead of choices driven by habit. Then comes deliberate action, the step where inner awareness becomes outward change. Deliberate action is not about doing everything at once. It is about taking one meaningful step that reflects who you want to become. It is choosing to breathe deeply before responding, choosing to move your body when your energy feels heavy, choosing to set boundaries instead of stretching yourself thin, choosing to speak honestly instead of suppressing your feelings. These small intentional actions create momentum. Each one sends a signal to your mind and body that you are ready to move forward, that you are reclaiming control over your energy, and that you are no longer willing to remain stuck in cycles that drain you. As you reconnect with intention, your mind begins to settle. The mental noise gradually quiets because you are no longer resisting yourself. Your body begins to loosen, releasing tension that has been stored for months or years. Your breath deepens, your focus sharpens, and your energy slowly gathers strength again. You begin to feel more present, more grounded, more capable of facing life with clarity. Deliberate action creates alignment, and alignment restores flow. When you bring mindfulness, breath, and purposeful movement into your daily life, the internal blocks that once felt immovable begin to soften. Through awareness, reflection, and intentional effort, the energy that was once trapped inside you begins to move again, opening the path for renewed vitality and a deeper connection with your most authentic self. Energy begins to move again the moment you create space inside yourself, space to breathe, to observe, to reset, and to realign your inner world. Most people believe that feeling stuck is a sign to push harder, to speed up, or to add more pressure. But in reality, stuck energy is a message asking you to pause. It is your system telling you that something within you needs attention before forward movement can return. Creating space is not a withdrawal from life, it is an intentional act of returning to yourself so you can move with clarity instead of force. Stillness is the first doorway to this inner space. It is not the absence of activity, and Hausa Alvmo says, but the presence of awareness. When you stop for a moment, truly stop, you allow your mind to settle enough for you to notice what has been happening beneath the surface, the thoughts that rush through your mind without your permission, the emotions that linger quietly in the background, the tension you have been carrying in your shoulders or chest. All of this becomes visible when you create space through stillness. Without stillness, these inner signals are drowned out by distraction, urgency, and routine. With stillness, they begin to speak clearly, guiding you toward the areas of your life that need adjustment. Breath is another form of space making. When your breath is shallow, your energy cannot expand. It becomes trapped in small pockets of tension throughout your body. Deep conscious breathing interrupts this pattern. It opens the chest, releases pressure from the nervous system, and calms the mind. Breath creates space between your thoughts and your reactions, allowing you to choose rather than simply respond. This simple act of breathing with intention restores balance more quickly than most people realize, because breath is the bridge between the body and the mind. When the breath becomes steady, the body begins to loosen and the mind follows. Reflection also plays a crucial role in creating internal space. Reflection is the practice of sitting with your own truth, seeing your habits, your fears, your desires, and your patterns without trying to hide from them. It requires honesty, but it does not require judgment. Reflection allows you to notice the moments where you compromise your own values, the places where you avoid discomfort, and the situations where you silence yourself even though something inside you wants to speak. Through reflection, you clear mental clutter. The more clarity you gain, the more room your energy has to move. Without reflection, you continue living inside the same patterns, unaware of how they shape your days. Deliberate action then emerges naturally from this internal space. It does not come from pressure, but from alignment. When you act deliberately, you choose your behaviors rather than acting on autopilot. You take steps that reflect your true intentions. You set boundaries because you understand your limits. You rest when your body needs recovery. You speak up when something matters. Each of these small choices redirects your energy, breaking old cycles and creating new pathways for movement. Deliberate action reinforces the space you created within yourself, helping you maintain clarity even as challenges arise. Through this combination of awareness, breath, reflection, and intentional behavior, your energy gradually finds its way back into motion, flowing more freely as you continue to create space for it to expand and grow. Energy begins to shift the moment you stop running from yourself, because facing your inner world with honesty is the most direct path to releasing what has kept you stuck. Many people move through life avoiding the very emotions, memories, and truths that hold the key to their freedom. Avoidance becomes a habit, sometimes subtle, sometimes obvious, and it causes your energy to become trapped in places you're unwilling to look. When you finally gather the courage to turn inward instead of outward, what once felt heavy begins to soften. This willingness to meet yourself where you truly are is the foundation of genuine transformation. Avoidance does not always look like fear. It often hides behind distraction, busyness, or constant movement. You fill your days with tasks, conversations, and noise because stillness would bring you face to face with feelings you'd rather ignore. You convince yourself that responsibilities must come first, that you don't have time for introspection, or that your discomfort will disappear on its own. But what goes unaddressed does not vanish. It waits. It settles deep in the body, in the breath, in the mind, quietly influencing every decision you make and every step you take. Your energy becomes divided, pulled in two directions, one part of you moving forward, the other part holding back. Facing yourself means acknowledging the emotions you've suppressed. It means sitting with the sadness you never fully processed, the anger you never expressed, the fear you pretended didn't exist. These emotions are not weaknesses, they are messages. They point to areas of your life where boundaries were crossed, where expectations became too heavy, or where you abandoned parts of yourself to meet the needs of others. When you finally allow these emotions to surface, you free the energy that has been locked inside them. What once felt like a burden becomes information, insight, and eventually strength. Facing yourself also means recognizing the truths you have avoided. Perhaps you've stayed in situations that no longer support your growth, or held on to goals that no longer gel with who you are. Perhaps you've convinced yourself to settle because leaving or changing felt too uncertain. These truths can be uncomfortable, but they are essential. When you face them, you reclaim the energy that has been wasted on denial, resistance, or pretending. You begin to see clearly again, not through the lens of fear, but through the clarity of honesty. Another part of meeting yourself is accepting responsibility for your patterns. This is not about blame, it is about empowerment. When you accept that certain habits, choices, or reactions have contributed to your stuckness, you also accept that you have the power to change them. Responsibility removes you from the role of a passive passenger and places you back in the position of the driver. This shift releases an enormous amount of energy because it breaks the illusion that life is happening to you. Instead, you recognize that life is responding to you, to your actions, your mindset, and your willingness to grow. The more you face yourself, the lighter you become. The internal pressure you've carried begins to dissolve because you are no longer fighting your own truth. Energy that was once trapped in avoidance, denial, or fear begins to flow again, guiding you toward clarity, authenticity, and deeper alignment with who you truly are. Energy does not return through force, pressure, or willpower alone. It returns when you take small, consistent, disciplined steps that reconnect your mind, body, and actions with your deeper values. Many people believe transformation requires dramatic change, quitting everything, reinventing themselves overnight, or breaking every old pattern at once. But genuine alignment is built through daily practice, through subtle shifts that seem almost insignificant at first glance. It is these small steps, repeated with intention, that gradually rewire your inner world and restore movement where there was once stagnation. When you take a single deliberate step, you disrupt the cycle of inertia, even if it is small. A deeper breath, a moment of reflection, 15 minutes of silence, a mindful walk. It signals to your entire system that you are choosing awareness over autopilot. This signal is powerful. It awakens your mind from its habitual rush, reminding it that clarity does not come from doing more, but from doing what matters. One small step tells your mind, we are moving again, and that shift begins to clear the fog that has blurred your focus. Your body responds just as strongly to these small actions. A stretch that releases tension, a slow breath that softens the chest, a simple posture adjustment that opens the spine. Each physical choice restores a piece of your energy. The body does not need dramatic interventions to begin healing. It needs consistency. When you give it small moments of attention, it begins to let go of the tightness it has stored for weeks, months, or even years. These gradual releases accumulate, creating a sense of lightness that builds quietly but steadily. Disciplined action also reshapes your emotional patterns. When you choose a small step in a moment you would normally avoid, suppress, or distract yourself, you train your emotional system to respond differently. You teach yourself that discomfort is not a barrier, but an invitation. Each small step becomes a message to your emotions. I hear you, and I am willing to move with you instead of running from you. Over time, this practice builds emotional resilience. You stop fearing the sensations within you and start trusting yourself to handle them with clarity. These disciplined actions also have a profound effect on your identity. Every small, intentional choice becomes evidence of who you are becoming. The person who takes one mindful breath is someone who values inner peace. The person who reflects for 5 minutes is someone who seeks clarity. The person who stretches instead of scrolling is someone who prioritizes well-being. Identity is not shaped by grand declarations, it is shaped by repetition. Every step you take reinforces the narrative that you are someone who is capable of change, someone who chooses alignment even when it is difficult. Most importantly, small disciplined steps create momentum. Once you take one step, the next becomes easier. Once you pause to breathe, the mind quiets just enough for you to see the next choice clearly. Momentum builds not through intensity, but through consistency. It is the accumulation of these small actions done with intention, done with presence, done repeatedly that eventually breaks the walls of stagnation and restores the natural flow of energy you were always meant to feel. When you begin to move your energy, your life moves with you, because energy is never meant to remain stagnant. It is designed to circulate, expand and evolve. Yet most people wait for life to change before they change themselves. They wait for inspiration before they... Movement does not always begin with certainty. In fact, it rarely does. It often begins in confusion, fear, or doubt. But the act of moving forward despite these feelings is what transforms them. When you take action while uncertain, you teach your mind that clarity is not a prerequisite for progress. Clarity is the result of progress. The moment you move, even if the direction is imperfect, your mind begins to reorganize itself around that movement. What once felt blurred begins to sharpen. They change themselves. They wait for inspiration before they take action, for clarity before they make a decision, for motivation before they move. This waiting creates a loop where nothing shifts, internal or external, because movement must start from within. When you initiate even the smallest internal shift, life responds. The world around you adjusts, opportunities open and situations reshape themselves because your internal state is the foundation of everything you experience. Options you couldn't see before become visible. The path forward becomes clearer precisely because you stopped standing still. Your emotional energy shifts in the same way. Emotions tend to deepen when you avoid them, stagnate when you resist them, and soften when you move with them. Movement doesn't mean running away from your feelings. It means allowing them to flow through you instead of letting them root into your body. When you express an emotion honestly, when you breathe off a moment of tension, when you give your feelings permission to exist, they begin to lose their grip. Emotional energy transforms through expression, not suppression, and each time you move with your emotions instead of against them, you reclaim a part of your inner power. The body also responds to movement with a kind of gratitude. When you stretch, breathe, walk or ground yourself physically, your body wakes up, tension loosens, circulation increases, sensations return. A body in motion does not only create physical vitality, it reshapes your mental and emotional state. Your posture changes the way you think. Your breath changes the way you feel. Your movement changes the way you see yourself. Even simple physical actions, lifting your chest, relaxing your jaw, taking a slow deliberate step, communicate to your entire system that you are ready to re-engage with life. Movement creates momentum, and momentum reshapes your belief system. Once you start, even timidly, you begin to realize that the barriers you once saw as immovable were often internal, not external. You start to see that action generates confidence far more reliably than confidence generates action. With each step, your sense of capability grows. You begin to trust your ability to adapt, to choose, to respond, and to move through challenges instead of being overwhelmed by them. The belief that you are capable of momentum becomes part of your identity, and this belief is one of the strongest forms of energy you can possess. As your internal movement becomes consistent, your external world mirrors that consistency. Situations evolve because your perception evolves. Relationships shift because your boundaries shift. Opportunities emerge because your mindset opens. When you move your energy through breath, action, honesty, or intention, life begins to move around you with surprising synchronicity.